Imagine this, a mysterious book mentioned in the Bible, but little known in truth. The Book of Jasher or Jasher. Could it reveal hidden secrets? Who wrote it? And why is it not in the Bible as we know it? Get ready, because this story will leave you in awe. Let's go back in time and dive into a world of ancient enigmas and mysteries. What do you think would happen if we discovered that crucial events in biblical history were recorded in a separate book? Just imagine, epic battles, forgotten heroes, surprising details. All of this could be hidden in the pages of the Book of Jasher. And what if I told you that even great kings and prophets might have consulted this book? Did it really exist? Or is it just a legend created to pique our curiosity? Hold on to that question, because the answer might change everything you think you know about biblical history. Stay tuned, because we will unravel every layer of this mystery, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Ready to discover what few have dared to investigate? Then, let's go, because this journey is just beginning and the revelations will be surprising. Origin and authenticity of the Book of Jasher, Jasher. Have you ever heard of the Book of Jasher? This ancient text is shrouded in mystery that sparks curiosity and debate among scholars and religious people. The origin and authenticity of the Book of Jasher are heavily discussed topics, mainly because historical and archaeological evidence surrounding it is scarce and often inconclusive. Most experts agree that the Book of Jasher mentioned in the Bible may not be the same as the versions of the text we have today. There are no ancient manuscripts that can be precisely dated, and therefore, the authenticity of the book remains open. The archaeological evidence supporting the existence of the Book of Jasher is limited. There are no manuscript discoveries that can be directly linked to the period in which it was supposedly written. Instead, most of the texts circulating today are copies or translations of much more recent versions, raising questions about their fidelity to the original texts. Some scholars argue that the lack of concrete evidence makes it difficult, if not impossible, to confirm the authenticity of the book as an ancient and legitimate text. On the other hand, there are references to the Book of Jasher in the Bible, providing an interesting starting point for discussions about its authenticity. For example, in Joshua 10 verse 13 and 2 Samuel 1 verse 18, the Bible mentions the Book of Jasher as a source of additional information. This suggests that the book, or at least a version of it, existed at the time these biblical texts were written. However, these references are brief and do not provide enough detail to confirm the authenticity of the book we have today. In addition to biblical references, other ancient texts also mention the Book of Jasher, further complicating the question of its origin. Some scholars believe that these mentions may be based on oral traditions or lost texts that were popular in antiquity. The lack of clear consensus on what exactly constitutes the Book of Jasher makes authenticating the text a continuous challenge. Therefore, the discussion about the origin and authenticity of the Book of Jasher is far from resolved. Although there are historical references suggesting the existence of a text by that name, the lack of archaeological evidence and ancient manuscripts makes it difficult to validate any version of the book we have today. The question remains a fertile field for research and debate, keeping the Book of Jasher as one of the most enigmatic texts of ancient literature. Content and structure of the book. The content of the Book of Jasher is as intriguing as its origin. The book is composed of various narratives and themes that, in some way, complement and expand the canonical biblical accounts. One of the main characteristics of the Book of Jasher is its detailed approach to biblical events and characters, often providing additional information or alternative versions of known stories. This makes it a fascinating text for those seeking a broader understanding of biblical narratives. The themes present in the Book of Jasher are diverse and cover everything from the creation of the world to significant historical events. The book includes stories about Adam and Eve, Noah's flood, and even details about the lives of the patriarchs such as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Additionally, the Book of Jasher also addresses heroic events and battles, often offering a more epic and detailed perspective than that found in the canonical biblical texts. A comparison between the content of the Book of Jasher and the canonical biblical accounts reveals some interesting differences and similarities. For example, while the Bible offers a more concise version of certain events, the Book of Jasher tends to expand these narratives with additional details and secondary characters. This can be seen as an attempt to fill gaps or provide a richer understanding of the events described in the Bible. However, this approach also raises questions about the fidelity and intention behind these additions. The structure of the Book of Jasher is organized chronologically, following a timeline that goes from creation to important historical events. This facilitates the reading and understanding of the events, but also raises questions about the authenticity and authorship of the text. Some scholars suggest that the chronological structure may have been an attempt to give the book an appearance of legitimacy and coherence, even if it was written or compiled much later than the events it describes. In summary, the content and structure of the Book of Jasher offer a rich and detailed perspective on biblical events, but also raise questions about its authenticity and intention. The comparison with canonical biblical texts reveals both similarities and differences, making the Book of Jasher an intriguing read and, at the same time, a subject of continuous study and debate among scholars and religious people. Purpose and intention of the book. When we delve into the purpose and intention of the Book of Jasher, some intriguing questions arise. Why would someone have compiled these specific narratives? It is believed that the book was created with the intention of preserving oral traditions and heroic stories that were part of the cultural and religious heritage of the Hebrew people. It is not uncommon for ancient cultures to use writings as a way to perpetuate their identity and values, especially in times of crisis or transition. Another point to consider is that the Book of Jasher may have been an attempt to complement or expand the canonical biblical accounts. The stories contained in it often provide additional details or different perspectives on events described in the Bible. This suggests that the authors or compilers of the book had a desire to record a more comprehensive version of sacred history, perhaps to reinforce faith or to offer moral teachings through exemplary narratives. Furthermore, it is possible that the Book of Jasher was used as a teaching tool. In an era where literacy was limited, epic stories and poems were effective ways to transmit knowledge and values. The book could have served as an educational resource for religious leaders, teachers, and even for the education of young people, offering lessons in courage, faith, and wisdom. The intention behind the Book of Jasher could also be related to political and social legitimization. In many cases, ancient texts were used to justify the authority of leaders and strengthen social cohesion. The narratives of the Book of Jasher, which often exalt heroic figures and miraculous events, could have been used to inspire and unite the community, especially in times of adversity. Finally, we have to consider the possibility that the book had multiple intentions over time. What began as a simple compilation of oral stories may have assumed new functions and meanings as it was transmitted from generation to generation. Different communities and eras may have interpreted the Book of Jasher in various ways, using it according to their needs and circumstances. Controversies and theological debates. The Book of Jasher is not free from controversies and theological debates. One of the main questions that arise is its canonicity. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, the canonicity of a sacred text is of extreme importance, and the Book of Jasher was not included in the official biblical canon. This raises doubts about its authority and authenticity as a source of religious teachings. Different religious traditions have varying positions on the Book of Jasher. While some see the book as an apocryphal work of historical but not theological value, others consider it an important complementary piece to the biblical texts. There are also those who completely reject its relevance, arguing that it contains many inconsistencies and later additions that compromise its authenticity. The theological controversies surrounding the Book of Jasher also involve its content. Some scholars point out that the narratives in the book present alternative versions of biblical events that may conflict with the canonical scriptures. This leads to debates about the veracity of these stories and whether they should be considered part of the sacred tradition or simply as popular legends and myths. Another point of debate is the interpretation of the prophetic and miraculous passages contained in the Book of Jasher. In many religious traditions, the interpretation of sacred texts is a matter of great importance, and different readings of the Book of Jasher can lead to significant divergences. Some see these passages as metaphors or allegories, while others take them as literal historical accounts. Finally, there is the question of the influence of the Book of Jasher on other religious and literary works. Some argue that it had a significant influence on other apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts, as well as on early rabbinic and Christian literature. This raises questions about intertextuality and the formation of the biblical canon, fueling academic and theological debates that continue to this day. Cultural and literary impact. When we talk about the cultural and literary impact of the Book of Jasher, we are referring to the way it has influenced not only religious literature, but also art and popular culture over the centuries. This book, which is frequently mentioned in biblical contexts as a source of stories and traditions, has left a deep mark in various areas. For example, many medieval and Renaissance literary works reference the Book of Jasher, using its narratives as a basis to explore themes of faith, morality, and heroism. In the arts, the Book of Jasher also found its place. Many artists, especially in the Middle Ages, drew inspiration from its stories to create paintings and sculptures. The epic themes and heroic characters present in the book provided a rich source of material for sacred art, helping to perpetuate and popularize the narratives contained within it. Furthermore, in more modern times, we see references to the Book of Jasher in films, television programs, and even video games, showing that its influence has transcended centuries and continues to reverberate in contemporary popular culture. Popular culture has also embraced the Book of Jasher in less direct, but equally significant ways. For example, fantasy and science fiction literature often take advantage of themes and narratives that can be traced back to ancient and apocryphal texts like this one. The stories of heroes, epic battles, and divine interventions found in the Book of Jasher echo in many modern narratives of these genres, showing how popular culture recycles and reinterprets ancient traditions to create new forms of entertainment. Moreover, the literary impact of the Book of Jasher is not restricted to religious or fantasy texts. Authors from different cultures and traditions have used the Book of Jasher as a source of inspiration to explore universal themes such as the struggle between good and evil, the importance of faith, and the role of divine providence in human life. This influence can be seen in literary works around the world, demonstrating the universality and timelessness of the stories contained in this ancient book. Finally, the impact of the Book of Jasher on literature and culture is a testament to its resilience and continuous relevance. Despite not being considered canonical by most religious traditions, its stories and themes continue to inspire and resonate with people of all ages and backgrounds. This enduring influence is proof of the power of ancient narratives and how they can continue to shape our understanding of the world and ourselves. Translations and manuscripts. The history of the translations and editions of the Book of Jasher over the centuries is fascinating and complex. Initially, the book was written in Hebrew, but over time, as different cultures and religious communities became interested in its content, it was translated into various other languages. One of the first significant translations was into Latin, which helped disseminate the text throughout Europe during the Middle Ages. Subsequently, the Book of Jasher was translated into English, French, and several other European and Asian languages. Each translation brought with it unique variations and interpretations, reflecting the concerns and interests of the communities that produced them. For example, some translations emphasized certain theological aspects of the book, while others focused on its heroic and epic narratives. These differences in translations created a rich mosaic of interpretations, but also raised questions about the reliability and fidelity of the translated texts in relation to the original manuscripts. Speaking of manuscripts, the issue of variation among different copies of the Book of Jasher is another area of great interest. Over the centuries, many different manuscripts have been discovered, each with its peculiarities and textual differences. These variations result from copying errors, intentional interpolations, and adaptations made by scribes over time. Studying these variations is crucial for scholars seeking to understand the evolution of the text and its transmission through the centuries. The reliability of the available manuscripts is a topic of ongoing debate among academics. Some argue that the variations are minimal and do not significantly affect the content and message of the book. Others, however, point out that certain textual differences may have important implications for the theological and historical interpretation of the Book of Jasher. This debate is part of a broader discussion about the fidelity of ancient texts and the ability of modern scholars to accurately reconstruct the original texts. Finally, The history of the translations and manuscripts of the Book of Jasher is a testament to the complexity and richness of the ancient textual tradition. It reminds us that religious and literary texts are living and dynamic, changing and evolving as they are transmitted through generations. This history also highlights the importance of the work of translators and scribes, whose efforts ensured that the Book of Jasher continued to be a source of inspiration and study for future generations. Comparison with other apocryphal and pseudepigraphal books. The Book of Jasher occupies an intriguing place in the context of non-canonical religious literature, alongside other apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts. For those unfamiliar, apocrypha are books that were not included in the official canon of Scripture, while pseudepigrapha are texts falsely attributed to biblical authors or important figures. Comparing the Book of Jasher with other texts in this category helps us better understand its relevance and uniqueness. One of the most notable aspects of the Book of Jasher is its wide range of epic and heroic narratives, which have parallels in other apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. These books, like Jasher, offer detailed stories that expand and complement the canonical biblical accounts. However, while the Book of Enoch focuses more on apocalyptic visions and the Book of Jubilees on detailed chronologies, the Book of Jasher stands out for its historical and heroic narratives. Another interesting point of comparison is how each of these texts has been received and interpreted by different religious traditions. For example, the Book of Enoch is highly valued in the Ethiopian tradition, where it is considered canonical, while it is largely ignored or rejected by other Christian traditions. The Book of Jasher, in turn, has a more fragmented reception, with some religious and academic communities giving it significant attention, while others consider it of lesser importance. The authenticity and origin of the texts are also subjects of debate among scholars. Many apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts have obscure origins and complicated transmission histories, and the Book of Jasher is no exception. Comparing the historical and archaeological evidence of these texts can shed light on their origins and help understand how and why they were written. In the case of the Book of Jasher, there is a rich tradition of manuscripts and translations that further complicates the question of its authenticity. Finally, comparing the Book of Jasher with other apocryphal and pseudepigraphal books helps place it within a broader literary and religious context. This comparative analysis reveals both the similarities and differences between these texts, enriching our understanding of ancient religious literature and the diversity of traditions it encompasses. Ultimately, studying the Book of Jasher alongside other apocryphal and pseudepigraphal texts offers a more complete and nuanced view of the ancient religious world and its complex narratives. So folks, we are almost at the end of this incredible journey through the Book of Jasher. But before we say goodbye, let's reflect a little more on the impact of this book on our beliefs and the historical understanding of biblical peoples. Have you ever stopped to think about what else might be hidden between the lines of the texts we know? Have you imagined how many secrets are still to be discovered? And what if the Book of Jasher is just the tip of the iceberg? Think of the stories of heroes, giants, and epic battles it reveals to us. Could these narratives change the way we interpret other sacred books? What other forgotten stories might be waiting to be rediscovered? Now, imagine what it would be like if more ancient manuscripts came to light. What new perspectives would this bring to our faith and understanding of the past? Are we prepared for these revelations? And you, have you read the Book of Jasher? What did you think of its stories? Leave your opinion in the comments and let us know what other stories or books you would like us to explore here on the channel. Stay tuned, because in the next video we will dive even deeper into another fascinating biblical discovery. Until then, how about sharing this video with your friends and debating these revelations together? See you soon.